The morning sun spilled through the towering windows of the Ritz-Carlton Chicago, bathing the bridal suite in a warm golden glow. It should have been the most beautiful day of Marissa Lane's life. Her wedding gown hung beside the balcony doors, shimmering like a promise. Makeup artists whispered softly as they arranged their brushes beside a sleek silver tray. The skyline outside stretched endlessly, glossy and bright, as if the entire city were preparing to celebrate her future. But inside Marissa's chest, something twisted. Her iPhone buzzed for the third time that hour. Another anonymous text she refused to open. She told herself it was nerves, just the usual pressure of marrying into one of the wealthiest hotel families in America. Still, her hands trembled as she reached for the glass of water on the marble counter. The delicate Cartier bracelet on her wrist, a gift from Caleb, felt suddenly heavy. "Marissa, breathe," one of the stylists murmured. She tried. She truly did. But the unease only grew. It started with the flowers arriving in the wrong colors, deep crimson instead of soft ivory. Then the seam on her wedding gown had mysteriously torn overnight, forcing a frantic repair. And now, the wedding coordinator rushed in and whispered something to the makeup team, prompting several worried glances Marissa pretended not to notice. Finally, her maid of honor leaned in. "Caleb hasn't checked in yet," she said quietly. "No one can reach him." Marissa blinked. "He's probably busy. His family's always chaotic." "That's not all," her maid of honor continued. "Someone said they saw a woman leaving his floor early this morning." The words sliced through the air like cold steel. Marissa felt the room tilt for a moment. She gripped the edge of the vanity to steady herself. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, hard, uneven, warning her. She searched her reflection in the mirror, soft waves of chestnut hair, delicate eyeliner, a smile she was forcing too much. She suddenly looked like a stranger dressed in white. A knock interrupted the silence. Beckett Rhodes, CEO of a rival event firm, someone she never expected to see today, stepped inside, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that too easily belonged to this world of wealth and power. His eyes scanned her face. "You need to be careful today," he said, voice low. "Some things aren't what they look like." Marissa swallowed hard. "What do you know?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not here." Before she could question him, a staff member hurried in, pale and breathless. "Miss Lane, there's something you need to hear, and you need to hear it now." The room froze. Marissa stood, her pulse quickening as the walls seemed to close in around her. Something told her that whatever she was about to hear would destroy everything she believed was real. The suite door clicked shut behind the trembling staff member, leaving Marissa standing in a silence so sharp it felt like glass. Her pulse hadn't steadied since sunrise, and the uncertainty wrapped around her like a cold veil. Caleb Montgomery was not answering her calls, not a single one. She tried again now, tapping the familiar contact on her iPhone, straight to voicemail. The automated voice cut through her hope like a blade. "The person you're trying to reach is unavailable." Unavailable. On his wedding morning. She stared at the screen, fighting the sinking feeling spreading through her stomach. Caleb had always carried himself with that polished, confident charm, the kind that made his tailored suits and Rolex seem like extensions of his personality. But these past weeks, he'd become distant in subtle, unnerving ways, leaving early, coming home late, brushing off her questions as if they were childish. Now the distance felt like a wall. A knock broke the tension. His mother, Eleanor Montgomery, stepped into the room. She carried herself with the cool elegance of old money, pearl earrings, a structured ivory coat, and the faintest perfume drifting behind her. Her expression was icy perfection. "Marissa," she said, offering no smile. "The guests are arriving. Please try to compose yourself. Have you heard from Caleb?" Marissa asked, voice tight. Eleanor paused. A flicker, too brief to decipher, crossed her face. He's handling matters regarding the family estate. Important responsibilities don't pause for weddings. But he promised he'd be here early, Marissa pressed. He said he wanted to see me before everything started. Eleanor's lips curled into something faintly resembling sympathy, though it held no warmth. My dear, men like Caleb carry burdens you can't understand. He'll appear when necessary. Necessary. Not when he wanted to. When required. Eleanor turned to leave, then hesitated. Oh, and Marissa, try not to look so anxious in front of the photographers. This wedding will be front-page news. The door closed. Marissa's chest tightened. She felt small, squeezed between expectations, wealth, and a family that barely tolerated her existence. Behind her, Beckett Rhodes crossed his arms, watching Eleanor disappear. They're hiding something, he murmured, and I don't think it's small. Marissa swallowed. What do you mean? Beckett met her eyes, his expression firm. I saw Caleb last night, and he wasn't alone. Marissa's breath caught, exactly as another anonymous message buzzed onto her phone. The suite felt different now, heavier, as if the walls themselves were listening. Marissa tried to steady her breath, but every inhale felt thin, every exhale shaky. Her bridesmaids whispered in a corner, pretending to organize bouquets, but their eyes kept drifting toward her with a mixture of pity and fear they thought she wouldn't notice. Finally, one of them, Hannah, approached. Marissa, there's something you should know, she murmured. She kept glancing at the door as if someone might burst through at any moment. This morning, one of the hotel attendants said they saw Caleb leaving the service elevators around 5 a.m., and he wasn't alone. The words lodged in Marissa's chest like a shard of ice. She forced herself to ask, Did they say who she was? Hannah shook her head, chewing her lip. Only that she was younger, tall, wearing a silver dress from last night's rehearsal dinner. The exact color Sloane Whitmore wore. Marissa gripped the edge of the vanity to keep her knees from buckling. Her reflection stared back at her, pale, frightened, yet trying desperately to remain composed. She didn't want to jump to conclusions. She didn't want to believe the worst about the man she was supposed to marry in less than an hour, but suspicion had begun threading itself through everything, like a slow, poisonous leak. Then the door opened again. A delivery employee wheeled in a large white box. For the bride, he said softly before exiting. Marissa frowned. I didn't order anything. Hannah helped her lift the lid. Inside was her wedding bouquet, except it wasn't the soft blush arrangement she had approved. These flowers were stark white lilies mixed with black calla stems, an eerily funereal combination. And tucked among the petals was a small silver envelope. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. A single line, typed in clean serif font, stared back at her. You deserve to know the truth before you say, I do. No name, no signature, no explanation. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear Hannah whisper, Marissa, someone is trying to warn you. Behind her, Beckett Rhodes stepped forward, having lingered quietly near the doorway. His expression hardened as he saw the bouquet. That's not a warning, he said. That's a push. Someone wants you to look deeper. Marissa swallowed, throat tight. Into what? Beckett met her eyes. Into Caleb, and into why he's really marrying you. Another buzz hit her phone. Another anonymous message, vibrating like a countdown. Marissa's hands were still trembling when she stepped away from the ominous bouquet. The suite felt too small, too bright, too exposed. She lifted her iPhone, intending to call Caleb again, anything to ground herself, but before she could dial, the device vibrated with a new notification. Voicemail. Unknown number. Her breath hitched. With hesitant fingers, she pressed play. At first, all she heard was static, a faint rustling, as if someone were covering the microphone. Then a man's voice, distorted but unmistakably urgent, poured through the speaker. "Marissa, you need to stop this wedding. Caleb isn't who he says he is. He's using you." The message cut off abruptly. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Hannah stepped closer. "Who was that? Do you recognize the voice?" Marissa shook her head, though something about the caller's cadence felt disturbingly familiar. She replayed the voicemail, straining to catch a detail, a background noise, a tone, anything that could anchor her. But the message was clipped, almost surgically clean, as if whoever made it knew how to avoid being traced. Beckett Rhodes remained leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. Expression unreadable. "Let me hear it." She hesitated. Beckett was still a rival in many ways, but something about his steady presence made her hand lift the phone toward him. He listened without a word, his jaw tightening with each second. "That wasn't a prank," he said. "Someone's genuinely trying to warn you." "Warn me about what?" Marissa whispered. "About Caleb? About his family? About—" She stopped herself. The questions flooded her faster than she could form them. Beckett's gaze softened slightly. "Marissa, men like Caleb Montgomery, they don't disappear on their wedding mornings. They don't break patterns unless something big is happening." A gentle knock interrupted them. This time it wasn't a delivery employee. It was a hotel security officer standing stiffly in the doorway. "Miss Lane," he said, voice careful. "There was an incident on the 36th floor. We were told to notify you." Marissa's skin prickled. "What kind of incident?" He hesitated. "We found personal belongings that appear to be yours, in a room you weren't registered to use." Her heart thudded painfully. "My belongings? Like what?" The guard swallowed. "Your veil, and a handwritten note addressed to you." Hannah gasped. Beckett straightened. Marissa felt her pulse collapse into a single, icy beat. The guard added quietly, "The note says you're marrying the wrong man." Marissa followed the hotel security officer through a series of quiet service hallways, far from the glittering lobby where guests were beginning to arrive. Each step echoed off the polished concrete floors, amplifying her anxiety. The bridal suite had felt suffocating, but this narrow, dimly lit corridor felt worse, like walking into the shadows of someone else's secrets. They stopped at an unmarked door on the 36th floor. "This room isn't usually accessible to guests," the officer explained. "Maintenance uses it occasionally, but this morning, someone requested access with Caleb Montgomery's credentials." Marissa's breath faltered. Caleb had been here? The officer opened the door. A chill slid down her spine. Inside, the lights were soft and warm, illuminating a small space furnished only with a table, 2 chairs, and a wall-length mirror. But her veil, delicate lace she'd chosen months ago, lay draped over the back of one chair, as if someone had handled it moments before. And beside it, on the table, sat a folded piece of thick stationery with her name written in elegant cursive. Marissa approached slowly, her heels silent against the carpet. She unfolded the note with trembling fingers. "Marissa, you're marrying into danger you don't see yet. Look beyond the aisle before it's too late." No signature. No clue. Behind her, Hannah whispered, "Who would write something like that? Someone close to Caleb? Someone trying to stop the wedding?" Beckett, who had insisted on coming with her, studied the room with sharp eyes. He stepped toward the mirror, running his hand along its edge. "This isn't just a random meeting room," he murmured. "It's designed for private conversations. High-profile guests use places like this to avoid being seen." Marissa tore her gaze from the cryptic note. "But why leave my veil? Who wants me to find this?" Beckett looked at her through the reflection. Someone who needs you to start questioning everything. Just then, a faint vibration buzzed through the room. Her phone, another anonymous text. She opened it with a knot in her throat. He didn't sleep alone last night. Her vision blurred. Hannah grabbed her arm to steady her. Marissa, maybe this is all a misunderstanding, someone trying to sabotage the wedding. But Marissa knew deep down that this wasn't sabotage. This was revelation, and she had only seen the first crack in a much larger fracture. The officer cleared his throat. Miss Lane, there's also camera footage from this hallway. Would you like to see who entered? Marissa's heart stopped. She whispered, barely audible. Show me. The security officer led them to a small monitoring room tucked behind a restricted access door. The air inside buzzed faintly with the hum of servers, and multiple screens flickered with hallway footage from the upper floors. Marissa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how cold the room felt. The officer clicked open a file labeled with a timestamp, 5:12 a.m. There, he said, pointing at the screen. Marissa leaned in, her breath stilled. Caleb appeared in the frame, still wearing his charcoal rehearsal suit, his tie hanging loose, his hair slightly disheveled. He looked nothing like a groom, hours away from his wedding. He glanced down the hallway cautiously, then swiped his keycard to unlock the hidden room they had just visited. But it was who followed him that made Marissa's stomach drop. Sloane Whitmore. Her silver dress shimmered like mercury under the security lights. Hannah gasped. Beckett swore under his breath. Marissa could only stare, numb, as she watched the footage. Caleb holding the door open for Sloane, his hand on the small of her back. Sloane leaning in close, her laugh echoing through the muted recording. They disappeared into the room together, the door clicking shut behind them. The officer paused the video. I found no footage of them leaving together, he said, but Caleb exited alone around 6:03 a.m. Marissa's vision blurred. She pressed a hand against the table to steady herself. Beckett stepped closer. Marissa, I'm sorry. But she shook her head. She needed answers. Something concrete. Something undeniable. Is there audio? She whispered. The officer hesitated. Hallways don't have audio, but the hidden room does. It's for security reasons. He clicked another file. The moment the audio started, Marissa felt the ground shift beneath her. Caleb's voice filled the room, smooth, confident, terrifyingly casual. After the ceremony, we move the assets. She signs everything. She'll never know what hit her. Sloane giggled softly. Poor Marissa. She thinks this is about love. Marissa's throat closed. Her knees nearly buckled. Caleb again. It's business. She's perfect for the merge, and once it's done, she's irrelevant. Beckett caught her by the arm before she collapsed. Marissa, hey, look at me. This isn't your fault. But she couldn't look at anyone. All she could hear was Caleb's final line, dripping with a coldness she'd never imagined. By tonight, she won't matter. And in that instant, Marissa realized. She wasn't just heartbroken. She was a target. Marissa stumbled out of the monitoring room, her vision swimming, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The chandelier lights of the hallway blurred into streaks, and the plush carpet beneath her heels felt as unsteady as a moving floor. Every breath she drew hurt, sharp, shallow, impossible. She gripped the nearest wall, her fingers trembling uncontrollably. Caleb's voice, cold, calculated, cruel, looped through her mind like a broken recording. By tonight, she won't matter. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't betrayal. It was erasure. A soft but firm hand closed around her elbow. Marissa, sit, Beckett urged, guiding her to a velvet bench near the private elevator. She sank down, her body folding as though something inside her had snapped. Her vision dimmed at the edges, and for a terrifying moment, she wasn't sure if she would faint. Hannah knelt beside her. Marissa, Honey, look at me. Breathe. Please breathe. But her chest barely moved. Her wedding day, the day she had planned with tenderness and hope, had become a meticulously crafted trap. Not just emotional, financial, legal, life-altering. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face. I was nothing to him, she whispered. Just a tool, a signature. Beckett crouched in front of her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. No, you are not nothing. You were targeted because you're valuable, because you trusted him. That's on him, not you. She shook her head helplessly. I loved him. I thought he loved me. How could I be so blind? Love doesn't make you blind, Beckett said gently. It makes you honest. He took advantage of that. That's the difference. A tear slipped down her cheek, hot, humiliating. She wiped it quickly, but another followed, and then another. She wasn't sobbing. She was unraveling silently. The way strong people break when the world finally pushes too hard. I can't walk down that aisle, she whispered. I can't pretend I don't know what I heard. Beckett's jaw tightened. Then don't. But the guests, the press, his family. Hannah squeezed her hand. Forget them. Think of you. Marissa lifted her gaze, eyes glassy, haunted. What am I supposed to do? She asked. Beckett exhaled slowly, studying her with an intensity she'd never seen in him before. You don't run, he said. You confront, but not like they expect. His voice dropped even lower. You turn the wedding into a reckoning. A shiver ran through Marissa, not of fear, but of something awakening beneath the devastation. Her collapse wasn't the end. It was the hinge. A storm was coming, and she would be at its center. For a long moment, Marissa sat frozen on the velvet bench, feeling the ruins of her future settling around her like dust. Her breath steadied slowly, not from calm, but from something harder, sharper, rising beneath the heartbreak. The kind of clarity that only arrives when everything else has been burned away. Beckett watched her closely, not pushing, just waiting. Hannah hovered protectively, holding Marissa's phone as if guarding it from another blow. Finally, Marissa lifted her head, and something in her eyes had changed. Not rage, not despair, precision. A switch had flipped. I won't let him win, she said, voice low but steady. If he planned to use me, then he can watch me end his entire performance. Beckett exhaled a breath he'd been holding. Good. Because you have power here. More than you think. Marissa stood, smoothing her hands down the front of her silk robe. Her reflection in the hallway mirror no longer looked fragile. She looked like someone who had walked through fire and kept moving. What do I do first? She asked. Beckett stepped beside her. You control the narrative. That's what Caleb fears most. Men like him thrive when women stay quiet. So don't be quiet. Hannah's eyes widened. Are you saying she should still walk into that ceremony? Not as a bride, Beckett replied. As a storm. Marissa felt a pulse of adrenaline. Her fear softened, reshaping itself into resolve. She thought of the guests filling the gold-trimmed ballroom, the photographers waiting by the aisle, the Montgomery family expecting to parade her as a decoration. No, not today. She turned to Hannah. I need my second gown, the ivory one with the structured shoulders. That one? Hannah blinked. It's bold. Exactly. Beckett nodded approvingly. You'll look untouchable. As Hannah hurried off, Marissa crossed to the window. The Chicago skyline glittered below. Steel, glass, ambition. For years, she'd admired it as a symbol of possibility. Now it looked like a battlefield she was finally ready to step onto. Her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. But this time the words didn't shake her. He thinks you'll stay silent. Marissa's lips curved, not into a smile, but into certainty. She typed back a single sentence. "Watch me." Then she turned to Beckett. "Help me rewrite this wedding." He extended a hand, not romantic, not possessive, simply steady. Together. And with that, Marissa Lane began her transformation, from betrayed bride to architect of reckoning. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton Chicago was already glowing when Marissa stepped out of the private elevator. Crystal chandeliers shimmered like constellations, scattering light across polished marble floors. A string quartet tuned their instruments near the grand staircase. Servers in crisp black and white uniforms drifted between tables adorned with towering floral arrangements. Everywhere she looked, the city's elite gathered: politicians, investors, luxury brand executives, socialites draped in silk and diamonds. The kind of guests who measured worth not in kindness, but in power. Marissa paused in the doorway, her second gown hugging her frame like armor. The structured shoulders gave her a regal silhouette, and the subtle sheen of the fabric caught the light with every breath she took. She no longer looked like a bride. She looked like a reckoning walking quietly into the room. Whispers began instantly. "Is that the bride? She looks different. Where's Caleb?" Their curiosity rolled toward her like a wave, but she held her posture steady. If fear existed inside her, it was nowhere to be seen. By the bar, Eleanor Montgomery's lips tightened the moment she spotted her. The matriarch glided over, her designer heels clicking sharply against the floor. "Marissa," Eleanor said, voice laced with irritation, "the ceremony begins in 30 minutes. Why aren't you in the bridal suite preparing, and where is your original gown?" Marissa smiled politely, cold, controlled. "Plans changed." Eleanor narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean?" Before Marissa could answer, a photographer from a major lifestyle magazine aimed his camera at her. "Miss Lane, one photo before the ceremony?" She angled her chin slightly, letting the camera capture not a shy bride, but a woman with quiet command. The flash illuminated her face, frozen at the intersection of heartbreak and defiance. Somewhere in the crowd, she spotted Sloane Whitmore descending the staircase, silver dress shimmering like a taunt. Sloane's confident smirk faltered when she noticed Marissa staring directly at her, not with pain, but with knowledge. Beckett Rhodes slipped beside Marissa, voice low enough for only her to hear. "You're controlling the room already? Good." "Are the files prepared?" Marissa asked softly. He nodded. "Everything's ready. The moment you give the signal, the truth goes public." Marissa exhaled slowly. The guests didn't know the script had changed. Caleb didn't know the bride no longer played the role he'd written for her. And as the orchestra began the prelude for the ceremony, Marissa stepped forward, ready to flip the world he'd built upside down. Caleb Montgomery entered the ballroom like a man stepping onto a stage built solely for him. His custom-tailored navy tuxedo fit him with effortless perfection, the subtle glint of a platinum watch peeking beneath his cuff. He walked with the confidence of someone who believed the world, and everyone in it, would always bend to his desires. He had no idea the ground beneath him was already cracking. Guests turned as he passed, offering congratulations and admiration. Caleb flashed charming smiles, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, too confidently. Not once did he look toward the doorway where Marissa had stood moments earlier. He assumed she would be waiting, obedient, tucked away in the bridal suite like a decorative accessory. But when he finally glanced toward the far end of the room and saw her standing in the open, chin lifted, posture powerful, eyes unreadable, he stopped mid-step. He hadn't expected that. Still, his arrogance resurfaced quickly. He smoothed his lapel and approached her with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Marissa," he said smoothly, "you're supposed to be upstairs. We have a schedule to follow." She studied him in silence long enough for discomfort to flicker across his expression. It was brief, just half a heartbeat, but it was there, a crack in the facade. "I made some changes," Marissa replied evenly. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Without consulting me?" "It's my wedding, too," she said. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "And it will go exactly as planned. We can't afford chaos today." Behind them, Beckett observed Caleb with unmasked disdain. It clearly irritated the groom. Caleb shot him a glare. "Why is he here? He wasn't on the guest list." Marissa didn't blink. "I invited him." "You did what?" Caleb hissed. "Marissa, we talked about who fits the image for this event." She almost laughed. Image. That was all she had ever been to him. Before she could respond, Sloane Whitmore glided into view, pretending to admire a floral display but positioning herself too close, too conveniently. Her silver dress caught the light like a blade. Caleb's eyes flicked toward her for a split second, a moment he shouldn't have allowed. Marissa saw it. Beckett saw it. The entire dynamic shifted. Caleb straightened again, trying to maintain control. "Let's get through this ceremony. Afterward, everything will make sense." Marissa stepped back, her voice calm, almost gentle. "Oh, Caleb, after the ceremony, everything will make sense indeed." For the first time that day, Caleb Montgomery looked genuinely afraid. The bridal preparation suite was quiet when Marissa returned, but it no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a war room. The soft ivory walls, once comforting, now reflected a sharper, colder light. Her original wedding gown still hung near the balcony, a symbol of the woman she had been only hours ago. Hopeful, trusting, unaware of the storm rising around her. She walked past it without a second glance. Hannah stood ready, holding the second gown, sleek ivory satin with sculpted shoulders and a commanding silhouette. It wasn't delicate, romantic, or soft. It was a declaration. "Are you sure about this?" Hannah whispered. Marissa nodded. "I'm done looking like someone he can control." As she stepped into the gown, the cool fabric molded to her form. Every seam, every fold, made her feel more anchored, more deliberate. Hannah zipped the back carefully, her hands trembling with a mix of fear and awe. "You look," Hannah swallowed, "different." "Good," Marissa said. "I need to be." She moved to the vanity, sweeping her hair into a polished, low twist. Her trembling earlier had vanished. Her hands were steady. She applied a muted lip color, clean, precise, and brushed a final touch of powder across her cheeks. In the mirror, a new version of herself stared back. Not the broken bride, not the victim. A woman reborn. A soft knock sounded. Beckett stepped in, holding a discreet black folder embossed with gold lettering. "Everything's ready," he said, "if you want to see it." Marissa took the folder, her pulse quickening. Inside were financial records, legal statements, digital copies of Caleb's plan, evidence meticulously assembled over the last 2 hours. Evidence that would end the Montgomery Empire's illusion and protect her from every trap Caleb had set. "You gathered all this so fast?" she asked quietly. Beckett shrugged lightly. "I've had my suspicions about Caleb for years. I just didn't have the right reason to dig deeper until now." Her throat tightened, not from sadness, but gratitude. "Thank you." He met her eyes, steady and sincere. "Just make sure you walk into that ceremony with your head high. The truth deserves a strong messenger." Marissa inhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. Then she lifted her chin. "Let's give him the wedding he deserves." She stepped toward the door, gown sweeping behind her like a blade of light. And as she walked out, the bride was gone. Only the storm remained. The ballroom doors stood wide open, revealing an aisle lined with white roses and flickering candles arranged in tall crystal vases. The string quartet began playing a soft prelude, a melody so gentle and pure it almost mocked the storm building beneath the surface. Guests shifted in their seats, murmuring with anticipation, blissfully unaware that the ceremony they were about to witness was nothing like the one planned. Caleb stood at the altar, straightening his cuffs as if preparing for a magazine cover. His polished smile remained firmly in place, though subtle tension pulled at the corners of his jaw. Every few seconds, his eyes darted toward the entrance, expecting Marissa to appear in the gown he had approved, carrying the bouquet chosen to match the Montgomery family colors. He didn't know she had rewritten the script. Behind the double doors, Marissa waited in silence. The sleek ivory gown hugged her form with sculpted precision, the structured shoulders giving her the presence of someone who commanded entire rooms, not begged for space in them. Her pulse thrummed, not with fear, but with purpose. Hannah squeezed her hand. The moment you step out there, everything changes. That's the point, Marissa whispered. Beckett stood slightly behind them, hands clasped. Posture steady. Just remember, he expects compliance. Give him the opposite. The cue from the quartet changed. It was time. The hotel coordinator pushed the doors open, and a hush fell instantly across the ballroom. Marissa stepped forward. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She wasn't the delicate vision they expected. She was a force. Calm, composed, radiant with clarity. Her footsteps echoed across the marble aisle, slow and deliberate, each one landing like a statement. Caleb's confident smile wavered. He whispered harshly as she reached the altar. "What are you wearing? Why did you change everything?" Marissa held his gaze, unmoved. "Because everything changed." He forced a laugh, glancing nervously at the guests. "Let's not make a scene." She leaned in slightly. "Oh, Caleb, I'm not making a scene." Then she turned toward the officiant with a serene smile. "I'm revealing one." The guests exchanged confused glances. The faintest hum of unease moved through the ballroom. Cameras lifted. Phones discreetly recorded. And Caleb Montgomery, for the first time that morning, seemed to understand. The ceremony wasn't unfolding for him. It was unfolding because of him. The officiant lifted his notes, ready to begin, but Marissa raised a hand gently, graceful, polite, yet commanding enough to silence the entire ballroom. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the string quartet faltered, bows freezing against violin strings. "I'd like to say something before we continue," Marissa announced. Caleb stiffened beside her. "Marissa, no, not now." But she kept her gaze on the crowd, her voice calm and clear. "Weddings are about truth. Before I make any vows, I think everyone deserves a moment of honesty." A ripple of confusion swept through the guests. Eleanor Montgomery sat straighter in her front row seat, suspicion tightening her expression. Sloane, perched near the staircase, shifted uneasily, fingers tightening on her clutch. Cameras from the Lifestyle magazine zoomed in, sensing a moment worth capturing. Caleb leaned toward her through clenched teeth. "Marissa, stop. Whatever this is, we'll deal with it privately." She finally turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You wanted privacy, Caleb. You shouldn't have chosen a public wedding." Gasps fluttered across the room. The officiant lowered his book, unsure whether to step back or intervene. Marissa inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "I had a vision for today, a future I believed in. A husband I trusted. A life I was ready to build." Her voice softened, but it didn't shake. But trust requires truth. And the truth is, some vows are spoken from the heart, while others are scripted for convenience. Caleb's face drained of color. Marissa continued, eyes sweeping the room. I learned something this morning, something painful, something that changes everything. Phones lifted discreetly. The entire ballroom leaned forward. Marissa, Caleb hissed, don't do this. She ignored him. I discovered that love wasn't the foundation of this marriage, not for him. I discovered that I was chosen not for who I am, but for what I could be used for. A collective gasp broke through the silence. Sloane paled. Eleanor whispered sharply to her husband. Caleb's mask cracked. This is madness. You're humiliating yourself. No, she said softly. I'm liberating myself. The guests stared at her, frozen, waiting, hungry for the truth she was about to unleash. Marissa took one final breath. Before I make vows, Caleb, maybe you should explain why you were in a restricted room with Sloane Whitmore at 5 this morning. The ballroom exploded, and the wedding began to unravel in real time. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Gasps, whispers, camera shutters clicking like frantic wings. Caleb lifted his hands, trying desperately to regain control. Marissa, stop this, he barked. There is no video. There is nothing to show. This is all a misunderstanding. But his voice cracked, barely noticeable, but enough for the front row to lean in. Marissa didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The calm in her tone carried more power than Caleb's panic. Then you won't mind proving it. A ripple of anticipation swept the room. Beckett, standing near the audiovisual booth, tapped a command into a sleek MacBook Pro connected to the ballroom's massive LED display. The orchestra fell silent. Lights dimmed. Guests turned toward the screen with collective breath held. Caleb spun around. Turn that off. That's not authorized. But the hotel technician ignored him. Beckett had already provided the legal override. The screen flickered to life. At first, only grainy hallway footage appeared. But as the timestamp sharpened into view, 5:12 a.m., the room drew in a single, unified breath. There was Caleb, his suit rumpled, his tie loose, his expression cautious as he scanned the hallway. Then Sloane Whitmore stepped into frame. Her silver dress shimmered under the security lights. She smiled up at him, touching his arm in a way no colleague ever would. Caleb opened the hidden room door for her, his hand lingering on her back. A wave of horrified murmurs swept through the crowd. Eleanor Montgomery pressed a hand to her chest. Sloane froze on the staircase, eyes widening in terror. Caleb lunged toward the technician. Turn it off now! This is private property. This is illegal! But before he could reach the booth, audio began to play. Caleb's voice filled the ballroom speakers with chilling clarity. After the ceremony, we move the assets. She signs everything. She'll never know what hit her. Sloane's soft laugh followed. Poor Marissa. She thinks this is about love. The ballroom went deathly still. A guest whispered, Oh my God. Another gasped, He was using her. Caleb whirled toward Marissa, his face drained of blood. This is manipulated. It's taken out of context. Context? Marissa echoed quietly. Show them the rest, then. Beckett tapped the keyboard again. Caleb's final line blasted across the ballroom. By tonight, she won't matter. The silence afterward was absolute, crushing, undeniable, a truth laid bare in front of hundreds. Caleb staggered back a step, exposed and cornered, and for the first time he understood the bride he thought he controlled had dismantled him completely. The ballroom erupted into a frenzy, voices overlapping, chairs scraping, guests rising to their feet in disbelief. Caleb stood frozen, his expression collapsing into something raw and desperate. But it was Sloane Whitmore who moved first. Her heels clacked violently against the marble as she turned, pushing through stunned guests. The silver dress that once shimmered like confidence now looked like a warning flare. Panic distorted her features. Don't let her leave, someone shouted. She's in the video, too. Sloane's breath came in sharp gasps. She shoved past a waiter, nearly toppling a tray of champagne flutes. The exit doors loomed ahead, her only chance to outrun the consequences spiraling toward her. But the moment she reached the lobby, flashes exploded around her, reporters, dozens of them. Their voices crashed like waves. "Miss Whitmore, were you having an affair with the groom? Did you know about the financial scheme? Is it true you helped orchestrate the fraud? Who is the real mastermind, you or Caleb Montgomery?" Sloane recoiled, shielding her face with trembling hands. "Stop! Get those cameras away from me!" Security moved quickly, but the damage had already been done. The footage of her fleeing, wide-eyed, frantic, was already streaming on half a dozen phones aimed directly at her. Back in the ballroom, Marissa stood unmoving, watching the downfall unfold with a quiet, steady breath. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat. But the heaviness pressing on her chest had begun to lift, just slightly. Caleb lunged toward her. "You planned this! You vindictive—" Beckett intercepted him instantly, stepping between them. "Careful, Caleb. Every camera in here is still rolling." Caleb stopped, chest heaving, sweat beading at his temples. The arrogance he once wore like armor had cracked into something ugly and unhinged. Marissa met his eyes unflinching. "You built this mess yourself." Outside, Sloane's cries echoed faintly as security escorted her toward a private hallway, but not before reporters captured every second. Her reputation, carefully constructed, meticulously polished, was dissolving in real time. Guests whispered sharply, "She was in on it." They ruined themselves. Marissa deserves better. Caleb is finished. The orchestra remained silent, instruments resting in their musicians' hands like forgotten props in a collapsing play. Caleb's voice broke through the noise, low, frantic, bitter. "This isn't over. You made a fool of me." Marissa stepped closer, her gaze colder than he had ever seen. "No, Caleb. You did that all on your own." And as security moved in his direction, Caleb finally realized he wouldn't be walking out of this ballroom as a groom. He'd be lucky to walk out at all. Security closed in on Caleb before he could lunge toward Marissa again. Two guards positioned themselves between him and the guests, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the unraveling Groom. "Mr. Montgomery," one guard said firmly, "we need you to step back." Caleb scoffed. "Step back? This is my wedding. Do you know who I am?" "Oh, they know," Beckett murmured, arms crossed. "The problem is, you're not the man you pretend to be anymore." A wave of uneasy laughter swept through the crowd. Caleb's fury deepened, veins pulsing at his temples. He looked around desperately for support, but the faces staring back at him were no longer admiring. They were horrified, disgusted. Some recorded openly, not bothering to hide their cameras now. Eleanor Montgomery pushed through the crowd, eyes blazing. "Caleb, what is this? What have you done?" Her son grabbed her arm. "Mother, it's not real. She edited the footage." But Eleanor had already seen enough. Her voice lowered to a cutting whisper. "You have disgraced this family." Behind her, board members of Montgomery Hotels exchanged grim looks. One of them, Mr. Kellerman, spoke quietly to the others. "This is catastrophic. Stockholders will demand immediate action." Another replied, "We'll need to call an emergency board meeting. If Caleb touched financial assets without authorization, he's finished." Caleb heard them, his face drained of color. "Wait, no, you can't do that. I'm the successor. This company—" "Not anymore," Mr. Kellerman said. "Your actions put the entire enterprise at risk." Marissa watched silently as Caleb tried to reclaim control of a narrative that had already slipped beyond his grasp. Every excuse he shouted only made him look more desperate. "You're all being manipulated," he yelled. "She set me up. She—" Beckett stepped forward smoothly. Funny, Caleb, because the evidence only shows you doing exactly what you planned. Caleb turned on him with a snarl. You think you can replace me? You think she'll choose you? Marissa cut him off with a calm, devastating clarity. This was never about choosing anyone. It was about protecting myself from you. The room erupted in whispers again. At that moment, a hotel manager hurried into the ballroom, expression urgent. Mr. Montgomery, he announced loudly. Federal agents just arrived in the lobby asking to speak with you. It concerns financial discrepancies involving your offshore accounts. The entire ballroom froze. Caleb staggered backward. No, this isn't happening. But it was. His downfall had officially begun. Caleb staggered backward as if the floor itself had shifted beneath him. The mention of federal agents rippled through the ballroom, pulling gasps from every corner. Even the quartet, still holding their instruments, froze mid-motion. Nothing about the moment felt real, at least not to the man who had always believed he was untouchable. No, this is a mistake, Caleb insisted, voice cracking. Someone set me up. You can't just... But the hotel manager stepped closer. They're waiting, Mr. Montgomery. They have documents. Warrants. Eleanor Montgomery brought a trembling hand to her mouth. Caleb, please tell me this isn't true. He reached for her, desperate. Mother? You know me. You know I wouldn't... But Eleanor stepped back, her expression collapsing in slow, shattering disappointment. Board members turned away, checking their phones, already drafting statements to distance the company from him. Investors in the front row whispered in panicked urgency. Reputation meant everything in their world, and Caleb's had imploded in under 10 minutes. Caleb spun toward Marissa, eyes wild. You did this! You ruined me! Marissa didn't flinch. I didn't ruin you. You ruined yourself. You just assumed no one would ever hold you accountable. Beckett moved slightly in front of her, not shielding her but making sure Caleb's desperation didn't turn reckless. You don't get to blame her, Beckett said. You don't get to rewrite the story now that you've been caught. Caleb's fists clenched, his voice rising. You think you're a hero? You think she'll end up with you after this? This isn't about ending up with anyone, Marissa answered steadily. This is about ending what you started. Another hotel staff member approached quickly. Mr. Montgomery, the agents insist. They say delaying will only make things worse. Caleb swallowed hard, eyes darting around as if searching for an escape route. But every exit was watched. Every pair of eyes in the ballroom bore witness. Sloane, escorted by 2 security guards from a side hallway, saw him and whispered harshly, I told you this would blow up. You thought you could control everything. Caleb glared at her. You told them, didn't you? You betrayed me, Sloane scoffed. Please, you betrayed yourself long before I ever had to. 2 federal agents finally stepped into the doorway, calm, composed, inevitability embodied in dark suits. Caleb Montgomery, one called. His knees nearly buckled, and in that single, crushing moment, the groom realized the world no longer feared him. It pitied him. The moment the federal agent stepped forward, the ballroom dissolved into a chaotic hum. Guests whispered urgently, some recording discreetly, others openly marveling at the spectacle. But Marissa had no interest in watching Caleb's final unraveling. She had already lived through the worst part, the betrayal. Everything else was simply consequence. Beckett leaned close. You don't have to stay here for the rest of this. She exhaled shakily. I know. I need air. He guided her toward a side exit that led to the Ritz-Carlton's private garden terrace. The sudden quiet felt unreal. The noise, the cameras, the accusations. They all faded behind the glass doors as Marissa stepped into a world of warm sunlight and cascading greenery. A fountain murmured softly nearby, its gentle rhythm grounding her. For the first time that day, she let her shoulders drop. Her heart still ached, Her mind still reeled, but out here, she could breathe. Hannah joined them moments later, eyes glossy but relieved. "That was unbelievable. You were incredible, Marissa." "I didn't feel incredible," Marissa murmured. "Just exhausted." "You should," Beckett said softly. "You carried the truth alone for hours, and you faced it in front of hundreds of people. That takes strength most never find." Marissa lowered herself onto a stone bench. The ivory gown pooled elegantly around her, a gown chosen for power, not romance. She stared at her hands, remembering how they trembled earlier, how close she'd come to collapsing. Now they were steady. "Do you think this will end tonight?" she asked quietly. "Tonight?" Beckett said. "No, but you're free tonight, and that matters more." A breeze rustled the ivy climbing the stone walls. Marissa tilted her head back, letting sunlight warm her face. The weight on her chest eased, just a fraction, as clarity settled in. For years, she'd believed that love required sacrifice, quiet endurance, bending, accommodating. But today had shattered that illusion. Love wasn't supposed to erase her, and Caleb never offered love in the first place. Beckett sat beside her, leaving a respectful inch of space. He held out a Mont Blanc pen, simple, elegant, unmistakably intentional. "What's this?" she asked. "A new beginning," he said. "You don't owe anyone your silence anymore. Use it however you choose." She ran her thumb along the smooth barrel. For the first time all day, her lips curled into a small, genuine smile. "I think," she whispered, "I'm finally ready to choose myself." Through the glass behind them, chaos continued. But out here, Marissa Lane felt the first quiet breath of freedom. By early evening, the world outside the Ritz-Carlton had already transformed into a media storm. What began as a wedding had turned into one of the most sensational scandals Chicago had seen in years. News vans lined the street, reporters clustered behind barricades, camera flashes lit the sidewalk like strobe lights. And at the center of it all, Marissa Lane's name. Inside the quiet lobby lounge, she sat with Hannah and Beckett, sipping water, her ivory gown now draped beneath a soft cashmere shawl offered by the hotel staff. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the table beside her. "Don't look at it if you don't want to," Hannah said gently. "I should," Marissa replied, steady but cautious. "My life is out there whether I check it or not." She picked up the phone. Notifications flooded the screen. News alerts, trending hashtags, dozens of messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Marissa Lane. Truth at the altar. The bride, who spoke a headline, flashed across one of the news apps. Montgomery heir exposed in wedding scandal. Bride reveals fraud plot before ceremony. Another. Guests stunned as groom's secret audio leaks during luxury Chicago wedding. Hannah leaned in. "You're being praised everywhere. People are calling you brave." Marissa wasn't sure how she felt. She hadn't exposed Caleb to be praised. She'd done it because she'd been left with no choice. But the validation still felt strangely grounding. Beckett scrolled through his own feed, eyebrows lifting. "Look at this," he said, turning his screen. "Montgomery Hotels just released a statement. They're distancing themselves completely. Caleb has been suspended from all operations." Marissa exhaled slowly. "It's all happening so fast." "That's how truth works," Beckett said. "Once it surfaces, it spreads." Through the glass wall behind them, she saw Sloane being escorted out a side exit, paparazzi yelling her name. Her hair was disheveled, mascara smudged, far from the perfectly curated persona she once held. The world was no longer applauding her. It was documenting her fall. And then, another notification lit Marissa's phone. A personal message request from someone unexpected, Caleb's younger sister, Elise. Hannah's eyes widened. "Are you going to open it?" Marissa hesitated. Elise had always been quiet, distant, but not unkind. She tapped the message. Marissa, I'm sorry for everything you went through. I tried to warn you last month, but Caleb intercepted my call. If you ever need anything, support, protection, a witness, I'm here. Marissa blinked, overwhelmed. For the first time since the collapse began, she felt something shift. The world wasn't just watching her. It was standing with her. 2 months later, the chaos had finally settled, at least for the world outside. For Marissa, life had transformed in quieter, deeper ways. The media storm faded as new scandals took over headlines, leaving behind only articles praising her courage and resilience. Caleb's legal troubles intensified. Sloane's reputation dissolved completely, and the Montgomery empire restructured without him. But Marissa didn't spend her days tracking their downfall. She was too busy building her rise. Her new design studio, Lane & Co. Events, opened on Fifth Avenue, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bustling street. Sunlight streamed across marble floors each morning, illuminating mood boards, delicate floral samples, and her sleek MacBook where bookings poured in faster than she could accept them. She wasn't just surviving, she was flourishing. Hannah, now her operations manager, bustled inside carrying coffee. We're fully booked for fall weddings, she announced proudly, and 3 corporate galas want consultations next week. Marissa smiled, the warm kind that reached her eyes. Let's take it one step at a time. I want quality, not chaos. Hannah laughed. Look at you, calm CEO energy. But it wasn't calm, it was peace. A gentle knock at the glass door made both women turn. Beckett Rhodes stood outside, dressed in a tailored navy coat, holding a small bouquet of soft white peonies, the kind Marissa loved but never bought for herself. When she opened the door, he offered them with an easy, quiet smile. Thought your new office could use something beautiful, he said. It already has something beautiful, she replied, then blushed lightly. But I'll take these too. He stepped inside, looking around the studio with admiration. You built this fast. You helped me stand when I couldn't, she said softly. This is what came after. Beckett hesitated, then extended a velvet ring box, not flashy, not overwhelming, elegant in its simplicity. Marissa froze. Beckett. He opened it slowly. Inside was not a diamond, but a thin gold band engraved with a single phrase, a life chosen freely. No pressure, he said gently. This isn't a proposal, not yet. It's a promise that whatever pace you choose, friendship, partnership, someday more, I'll walk it with you, no secrets, no schemes. Marissa felt her throat tighten, not with pain this time, but gratitude. She placed her hand in his. Then walk with me. Outside, the Manhattan skyline glowed under a rising sun. A new chapter, a new heartbeat, a new beginning. Marissa Lane had lost a wedding, but she found her life, and just like that, our story comes to a close. But hey, my wonderful friends, you're still here, right? If you've stayed with me till this very moment, it means something in Marissa's journey touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of a moment you had to walk away from someone who didn't value you. Maybe it showed you that healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from reclaiming yourself. The Stoics used to say, the obstacle is the way. And that's exactly what this story teaches us. Sometimes the heartbreak we fear the most becomes the doorway to the life we were meant to live. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Marissa couldn't control Caleb's actions, but she could control her response. And through that choice, she stepped into freedom, dignity, and a future she chose for herself. So if you're listening right now, remember this. Your worth isn't decided by anyone else. You get to rewrite your story at any moment. If this touched you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs strength today, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next journey. We're in this together, always. This story is a work of fiction, created purely for entertainment and emotional reflection. All characters, events, and situations are imaginary and not based on real people or real incidents. Any resemblance to actual individuals or events is entirely coincidental. The purpose of this narrative is to explore themes of resilience, self-worth, and personal transformation in a dramatic, cinematic way. Viewers should understand that the plot elements, including the wedding setting, business conflicts, and character motivations, are storytelling devices designed to inspire reflection, not factual accounts or advice. We encourage everyone to enjoy the story as creative content and interpret it as a symbolic journey rather than a depiction of real-world events. Thank you for supporting narrative videos like this and for helping keep our creative space safe and transparent for all viewers.